Thank you for coming to MTG Anonymous, your daily source for random free-to-play decks on MTG Arena. I would appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe whenever you get the chance. Also, feel free to watch any other content that I've produced. I'll see you in the video. Alrighty, welcome to MTG Anonymous. So, we've tested 3 decks today, and only one has worked so far, so we're going to do a deck tech on that. We're doing Rankle Brawl. Rankle Master of Pranks is the commander, and then, of course, Brawl has 60 cards, so this is pretty spread out. But average CMC is 2.2, so we're still doing really good on the average CMC. We got 22 creatures, 3 instants, 6 sorcery, 4 artifacts, 1 enchantment, and 24 lands. Let's go ahead and get into the deck tech. So first off, we have Rankle Master of Pranks for 2 a black and a black. You get a 3/3 Fairy Rogue with Flying and Haste. Whenever Rankle Master of Pranks deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. 1, each player discards a card. 2, each player loses 1 life and draws a card. Or each player sacrifices a creature. Now, normally what we're going to do is we're going to have one of our mini 1-drops out and then sacrifice a creature on our first swing. But also we're going to do each player discards a card and also discard a creature, because we have many ways to recur creatures out of our graveyards. But we're going to go ahead and go over the rest of the deck now. First off, we have a 1-drop. Bane Hound. For 1 black, you get a 1/1 Nightmare Hound with lifelink and haste. We're just going to pad our life totals just a little bit, since Rankle is going to cause us to lose 1 life and when we draw a card with him. So we're just going to keep doing this over and over again, getting Bane Hound out, getting lifelink, so on and so forth. Barrier of Bones for 1 and a black. For 1 black, you get a 0/3 Skeleton Wall with Defender, and when Barrier of Bones enters the battlefield, surveil 1. So you look at the top card of your library, you may put it into your graveyard. So if it's a creature card that you can't cast right at that moment, then you're going to go ahead and put that in the graveyard, unless you're running against Mono Black or Orzhov, because those are the only ones that are going to be able to exile cards out of graveyards. So, well, there are also a couple artifacts that do it too, but we're not as worried about those. So get creatures in your graveyard and then slowly bring them back as you go. Cauldron Familiar for 1 black, you get a 1/1 cat. When Cauldron Familiar enters the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life, and then sacrifice the food, return Cauldron Familiar from your graveyard to the battlefield. So what's happening is, of course, the Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven combo. Sacrifice Cauldron Familiar to the Witch's Oven, and then you can bring it back using that food whenever you feel like it. But also, Witch's Oven is in here so we can sacrifice creatures in response to exile effects, because we want our creatures to go to our graveyards, that way we can bring them back instead of them going to exile, since we can't interact with them there. Eye Collector for 1 black, you get a 1/1 Fairy with Flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Again, we don't care as long as the creature. Heraldic Banner is the one thing we don't want going into the graveyard, but anything else in the deck can basically go there, as we have multiple ways to get them back. Fulmir Knight for 1 black, you draw a card and lose a life with the instant Adventure Profane Insight. It's for 2 and a black, and then Fulmir Knight, the creature, is for 1 black, is a 1/1 with Death Touch. So Death Touch, since it's a 1/1, their creature will die, our creature will die, and then we'll be able to bring Fulmir back a number of ways. Knight of the Ebon Legion, for 1 black, you get a 1/2 Vampire Knight with. And then for 2 and a black, Knight of the Ebon Legion gets +3/+3 and gains Death Touch until end of turn. At the beginning of your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Knight of the Ebon Legion. So if we don't have anything to do, we're just going to pump all our mana into this and swing. Hopefully our opponent blocks, deals some damage, and then we'll be pretty much good to go. Vampire of the Dire Moon for 1 black, you get a 1/1 Death Touch lifelink Vampire. Again, Death Touch is awesome. We attack, our creature dies, their creature dies, and we have a creature to go grab back from our graveyard, so it's a win-win. And then the lifelink again, because we have ways, we're going to lose life as we draw cards in this deck, because that's what black does. We're going to need to gain life slowly and incrementally. Bone Splinters for 1 black is an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, destroy target creature. So, again, multiple ways to recur creatures. We don't care if they die, so we'll sacrifice it off and then destroy a creature. It's a win-win. Price of Betrayal for 1 black. Remove up to 5 counters from target artifact, creature, planeswalker, or opponent. So, yep, that does exactly what it does. We don't have to worry about Oko, since Oko was banned on Monday. So, This is basically for Nissa's, other Liliana decks, Nicobolas, stuff like that. Witch's Oven we've already gone over, but for one, it's an artifact. Taps, sacrifice a creature, create a food token. If the sacrificed creature's toughness was 4 or greater, create 2 food tokens instead. Again, like I said, if you get to the point where someone's going to destroy, or exile, excuse me, if someone's going to exile our creatures, we're going to want to sacrifice them to the Witch's Oven, make an extra food, etc., etc. And so then that way, as we get going, as the Cauldron Familiar dies, instead of having to sacrifice it to the Witch's Oven and then lose that ability, we can just bring it back using one of the extra foods we've made. Burglar Rat for 1 in the black. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. It's a 1/1. Again, we wanted to keep our opponent away from cards, so Rankle and this together will help get rid of cards in our opponent's hand. And then as we go, like, they'll be more reluctant to get rid of lands early game, and then they'll be forced to get rid of them late game, so it helps us out. As if it keeps our opponent away from mana, then it helps us more. Eternal Taskmaster, this is one of our recursion engines. For 1 in a black, you get a 2/3 zombie. It enters tapped. When it attacks, you may pay 2 in a black. If you do, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. With Eternal Taskmaster, most of the time, we're going to return a 1-drop creature. If it's turn 4 and we already have Rankle out, or, excuse me, turn 5, preferably. If it's turn 5, Eternal Taskmaster's been out and can attack. Rankle's out. What we'll do is we'll attack with Eternal Taskmaster. We'll bring back a creature. With Rankle, we'll discard a card. And so then we may have paid 3, but instead of losing a card, we stay neutral since we return something to our hand from the graveyard, and then we discard it again. So then that also triggers Syr Konrad both times, since a creature is going into our graveyard from somewhere, and then a creature is coming out of our graveyard going to our hand, or vice versa. Malevolent Noble for 1 in a black. For 2, sacrifice an artifact or another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Malevolent Noble. So this is another way we can sacrifice creatures. It may cost us some mana, but to save our creatures from exile effects, we would prefer to do this instead of letting them be exiled. Like, even like the Eyeball Collector is also important for this deck, so we wouldn't want that to be exiled. Now, if it is targeted and we don't have mana, that's okay, but we'd prefer for none of our creatures to be exiled. Order of Midnight, 1 in a black. This is one card you do want exiled. So, for 1 in a black, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. That's the Sorcery Adventure Alter Fate. And then the creature has flying. Order of Midnight can't block, and it's a 2/2. So what we do is we return Order of Midnight to our hand whenever we have the chance. We use the ability, the Sorcery Adventure, to return another creature card from our graveyard to our hand, and now we're positive. Yes, we paid 5 mana to do so, seeing as it costs 3 for Eternal Taskmaster and then 2 for the Order of Midnight, but that's given us another creature that potentially we could play, depending. Also, we can just sacrifice it to Rankle once it comes out, and then we can just rinse and repeat that process as we need to. Keep getting creatures out of our graveyard into our hand. If Syr Konrad is out, then we deal damage for each one of those iterations. So, Piper of the Swarm for 1 in a black. You get a 1/3 human warlock. Rats you control have menace. For 1 in a black, tap, create a 1/1 black rat creature token, and then for 2 a black and a black, tap, sacrifice 3 rats, gain control of target creature. Now, we're probably never doing the bottom, but if we have Rankle and Piper of the Swarm out, and Piper of the Swarm is able to tap, what we'll do is we'll tap, make the rat, attack with Rankle, sacrifice a creature, sacrifice that rat. So, that's keeping us neutral on creatures, and then we can get our 1/1s out, and so on and so forth. If we need to, like if there's a Drakuseth out, then we would want to collect our rats and then gain control of it, but that would take us just a little bit too long, so preferably we swing with Rankle, figure out a way to make it so it gets damaged through, and then we'll sacrifice creatures. Priest of Forgotten Gods, 1 in a black, human cleric for 1, it's a 1/2. Tap, sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. You add 2 black and draw a card. Again, sacrificing creatures is what we want to do, so we're going to do that. Our opponent's going to be forced to sacrifice a creature and lose 2 life. We gain 2 black and draw a card. Now, what we'll do is we'll do this on our attack step. If we have 5 creatures, obviously. So what? Well, probably 6. 6 creatures, right? Preferably, again, we have a rat or something from Piper of the Swarm. But, so we sacrifice our 2 creatures. They're forced to sacrifice a creature, and we add black. Now, if we have Eternal Taskmaster, we can pay that 2 black and another black, and then we can grab something back from our graveyard, preferably one of those creatures that we sacrificed. And now, when Rankle triggers, then we can discard a card, since we have 2 gained in our hand, and then we can force a sacrifice and sacrifice something else. Smitten Swordmaster for 1 and a black. The Sorcery Adventure version is Curry Favor. You gain X life, and each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of knights you control. It's a 2/1. We don't have many knights. Fulmir Knight, Knight of the Ebon Legion. If we have those 2 out, then we can do that. Gain 2 for 1. And then when we are doing our recursion engine of bringing stuff back to our hand, since it's only 1 mana, we can just do that and then bring the Smitten Swordmaster back, sacrifice it, and rinse and repeat. So that would do 2 damage basically each turn. Sorcerer's Broom for 2. You get a 2/1 spirit. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, another permanent, you may pay 3. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Sorcerer's Broom. So what we do is we sacrifice something with Rankle. We pay 3. Now we have an additional Sorcerer's Broom. Sacrifice something else, pay 3, get another one. And then once we get to a point, then we can start sacking the Sorcerer's Brooms off. And now instead of losing our creatures, we're just sacrificing Sorcerer's Brooms. And then we can pay 3 to bring another Sorcerer's Broom out. That's a lot of Sorcerer's Brooms. Say that real fast 3 times. Aid the Fallen for 1 and a black. Choose 1 or both. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and return target Planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. I don't think I have any Planeswalkers in here, and that is a misplay on my own part, but we can return target creature from our graveyard to our hand, and then use Rankle's ability, sacrifice it, whatever. Or we could always use that to get Order of Midnight back, stuff like that. Blade Brand, 1 and a black. Target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn. Draw a card. So, our opponent has flyers. We use Blade Brand, make Rankle Death Touch, kill that flyer that blocked it, draw a card. Dreadhorde Invasion for 1 and a black. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life and amass 1. Whenever a zombie creature token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains life link until end of turn. We really don't care about the life loss. What we're going to do is we're going to sacrifice that zombie creature we make every turn to Rankle. I guess we lose 1 life from that, and then we'll lose 1 life if we choose to draw, but we have other lifelink options in this deck, so we really don't care about that. And then also we'll be making a bunch of food tokens, so that's fine too. So we'll make that 1, we'll deal 3 to our opponent, and then we sacrifice the Dreadhorde token, and then they'll sacrifice whatever they got. Forever Young, 1 and a black. Put any number of target creature cards from your graveyard on the top of your library. Draw a card. So we sacrificed a whole bunch of creatures. We didn't have a way to bring them back. Use Forever Young, put all of them back on the top of your library, and then we just slowly go through this again. Giant Skewer for 1 and a black. Equipped creature gets +2/+1 whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a creature. Create a food token. We're going to put this on Rankle, knowing that Rankle's probably not dealing damage to, other creatures. But it'll make it a 5/4 instead of 3/3. So now we only have 4 turns to kill our opponent instead of 6. Liliana's Triumph for 1 and a black. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana Planeswalker, each opponent also discards a card. We care about the sacrificing creatures, seeing as they're going to sacrifice something they don't want to. Use Rankle, they'll sacrifice something they don't want to. So that's 2 sacrifices in 1 turn. Reeve's Soul for 1 and a black. Destroy target creature with power 3 or less. We don't want any chump blocking for Rankle, so we'll use this to destroy flying creatures, and creatures on the ground we don't really care about, since when we swing, they'll probably be sacrificed anyway. Severed Strand, 1 and a black, is an additional cost to cast this spell. Sacrifice creature. You gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. Destroy target creature an opponent controls. So again, sacrificing creatures to destroy creatures, and then we're going to recur them. Midnight Reaper for 2 and a black. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you, and you draw a card. It's a 3/2 zombie knight. So, another knight to trigger with the, I can't even remember, the Smitten Swordmaster? Yeah. So another Knight to trigger with Smitten Swordmaster. So we, again, it's dealing 1 damage to us. But now when we sacrifice creatures, we don't have to let our opponent draw a card. Now just we draw a card or we can draw 2. So, Murderous Rider for 1, a black and a black. You get Swift End. It's an instant adventure. Destroy target creature, a planeswalker. You draw 2. You lose 2 life. And then the creature side is a 2/3 zombie knight. When it dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. It has lifelink. So you can sacrifice this and it goes to the bottom of the library instead of the graveyard. I don't really like that. I prefer it to go in the graveyard so we can grab it back and use the adventure again. But I think Wizards figured out that people were going to try to do that, and that's why they preferred to put it on the bottom of the owner's library instead, which is okay, but... Another version of Swift End is Murder for 1, a black and a black, destroy target creature. It's an instant, so something pops out we don't like, we just destroy it on our opponent's turn if we have mana held up. Heraldic Banner for 3. As Heraldic Banner enters the battlefield, choose a color. Creatures that you control of the chosen color get +1/+0. Tap, add 1 mana of the chosen color. So, since we're all black here, we want our creature to get +1/+0, so Rankle will be a 4/3 instead of a 3/3, so reduce the timer we need to kill our opponents, so on and so forth. Dread Presence for 3 and a black. Whenever Swamp enters the battlefield, choose 1. Under your control, choose 1. You draw a card and you lose 1 life, or Dread Presence deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. So most of the time, we're going to do that bottom one. Now, drawing a card and losing a life is good if we don't have any cards in our hand. But if we don't have any cards in our hand, then Rankle's discard ability doesn't really affect us. So preferably, we just want to deal damage, gain life. Vindictive Vampire for 3 and a black. You get a 2/3 vampire. Whenever another creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. So now when we're sacrificing things and drawing cards with Midnight Reaper, now instead we just draw a card, and our opponent loses a life. So I like it. I like that way a lot better. Syr Konrad the Grim for 3, a black and a black. You get a 5/4 Human Knight. Again, another knight for the Smitten Swordsmaster. Cavalier of Night is also 1, so that's just a whatever. When another creature dies, or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Syr Konrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. 1 and a black, each player puts the top card of their library into the graveyard. We don't want to do that 1 and a black ability, since we don't have ways to get back our instants or our artifact. Yes, our instants are just removal spells, since literally every single one is removal in some way. Yes, they're removal, but I would prefer to do that and then have Rankle force them to get rid of something else, because Rankle doesn't like to deal with flyers, so I can destroy a flyer on their side and then swing and force them to sacrifice instead of swinging into the flyer and Rankle could possibly die. I'd prefer the other way around. Cavalier of Night for 2, a black, and a black. You get a 4/5 Elemental Knight with lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, destroy a target creature an opponent controls. We're going to do that. And then when it dies, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, I like this card because we can do things like Gravewalker combo once a turn, which is pretty cool. And then you get super late in the game, you can just keep doing that over and over again. So we'll sacrifice something that doesn't matter, like, say, the Burglar Rat, right? And then we can sacrifice it to the Witch's Oven, make 2 foods, and then return, say, the Burglar Rat to the battlefield. So now, each opponent discards a card. So if we have enough mana, we can use Gravewaker's ability, 5, a black and a black, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So bring the Cavalier of Night back. The next turn, sacrifice the Burglar Rat. We're just saying the Burglar Rat in this instance. You could also do the Cauldron Familiar this way too. So, and then when it dies, again, making food with the Witch's Oven, then we can return something like the Burglar Rat, force our opponent to discard. Boom. And then we can also just sacrifice Cavalier of Night to Rankle's ability, and then now we have Witch's Oven open for something else. Gravewaker for 4, black and a black. This is probably our best recursion. It's a 5/5 bird spirit with flying. And then, like I said in the last part, 5, a black and a black, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. We're going to be able to get to 7 mana relatively easy, since our opponents aren't going to have time to interrupt our stuff. They'll be too busy trying to get creatures out to keep us from swinging at them. Because the great thing about Rankle is you can swing with the creature you're going to sacrifice, but if it's a chance that that creature would die, you'd probably not want to do that. You'd want something like Order of Midnight, another creature with flying, to do so, and then pay the 7 to bring it back. If we have Gravewaker, then we won't do anything on our turn, basically. Discard a card if we have to do that, which we can do with Rankle, and then use Gravewaker to bring it back. So that's how that's going to work. Then for lands, or 24, Castle Lochwain enters the battlefield, tapped unless you control a swamp, tap it for black, and then 1, a black and a black, draw a card. Then you lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. Because Rankle is going to cause us to discard cards, keep our opponent's hand empty, we'll only lose 1 life when we do this most of the time. 22 swamps, and then Witch's Cottage. Witch's Cottage enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more swamps. We probably will, or 3 or more other swamps. And then when it enters the battlefield untapped, put a target card, a creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. So again, discarding things. So we discard something, then Witch's Cottage, grab it back, put it on top of our library. Our next turn we draw it, play it, use Rankle, so on and so forth. That's it for this deck tech. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and there will probably be a gameplay the next time I have a chance. I'm trying to get a whole bunch of videos out because I go back to work for 7 days starting tomorrow, which this comes out Thursday, so this afternoon I'll be at work. But anyway, enough of my life story. Enjoy the rest of your day. Later.